Welcome back, everyone. New North. Before we start, I just wanted to say New North, 20 years. That's a long journey and a long journey to come. And I saw earlier today Jerry Murphy out there, and of course I see Barb, the leadership of New North, and there'll be a new generation of leadership coming up. But I would like to add my thanks to you, Barb, for your vision, for your energy, for your leadership, and for your passion for business in Northeast Wisconsin. And I'd also like to thank you for being just the backbone of the New Launch Alliance here in Northeast Wisconsin. Through the New Launch Alliance, which New North created to support business discoveries and idea creators in our own Northeast area, our region was one of the first to launch the Start in Wisconsin online platform for founders as a way to start, scale, and accelerate their business endeavors. Several pitch events were hosted to assist in the launch of these new companies with new stories, I might add. Our work involves helping entrepreneurs at any stage in their development and work with corporate innovators. We thank US Venture for their continuing sponsorship of this afternoon's keynote dedicated to entrepreneurship and innovation. By the way, we're here in a place that has so many stories. And you can look up at the walls and you can see the stories of thousands of events that have happened here and Sunday afternoons over the years. And it's so wonderful that we have Akeem to continue to talk about the great stories of his work and the work of others. So if you would please join me in welcoming back for an exciting second half discussion, Akeem Shannon.
Awesome, awesome. I'm not gonna rap this time, guys. No. Oh, great. So, I think Tim made a great point about Green Bay, and I was sharing this with Barb at the break. And to me, this region, it really resembles the story of the Green Bay Packers, right? Here you have a team, not just in the smallest market in the NFL, the smallest market of professional sports teams in the world. And yet, even still, it's one of the 20th most valuable professional sports teams in the world, every single league. That's kind of unbelievable. And as we heard the stories from housing projects to all the different organizations and the sponsors, to me, it's like, man, the New North is really punching above its weight. It's really incredible, and I don't think that we could be in a better place that better resembles that other than Lambeau Field. So listen, this afternoon we're gonna keep it casual, but we're gonna go deep. And I think we have, let's see if we have our slides here. I am going to briefly bring back up our details about all of our different principles in the 3456 system, but I actually want to take questions because I want to make sure that I'm hitting on the real insights that people need around these topics. But briefly, I'll just go back over them so you can kind of know where we can go with this. So we got stories, mindsets, principles, and audiences. I told a lot of stories today, but they almost always break across these three categories. And so no matter your organization, no matter what you do, whether you are a startup, whether you are within an established company that's been around for 70 years, you're in recruiting, or you just want to grow your personal brand, there's only a couple type of stories that you need. And typically when I'm doing a workshop with an organization or individual, we'd like to work on about 6 stories, right? If you can have 6 stories that you can just go to and tell based off your audience, you'll be in a very, very good place. We can also talk today, and just real quick, if you think you're gonna have a question, just raise your hand so I can see who may have some questions. Just real quick, you don't have to know it now. We have one person that's gonna raise a question? Okay, all right, I see a couple, all right, great. We'll get into mindsets. I think that oftentimes we don't realize that success in entrepreneurship is really a spiritual exercise as much as it is a strategic exercise. And when we don't carry the right mindsets, we hit obstacles and we're not resilient. We're ready to give up. And I like to think of success and and business like a roller coaster. You know, it's not really climbing a mountain of success, but it's, hey, after every peak, you hit a valley. That's almost guaranteed. But the momentum that you have going into the valley is exactly what you need to get to the next peak. And so really understanding how we do that is important to how we tell stories and how we continue to grow. Principles, one that I didn't talk about is movie trailers. And I'd love to get into that. We'll take a couple questions first. But, you know, I mentioned one of my clients who got his deal with IBM. It took him 2.5 hours to relay to me what his business does in their stories. And I'm gonna be honest with you, ain't nobody listening to you for 2.5 hours, okay? It's not gonna happen. But it's how do we take 2.5 hours of content, the ups and the downs and the excitement, and we get it down to 2 minutes. The same way a movie trailer will give you all the emotions of the movie, right in that 90-second, 2-minute time slot without giving it all away so that you want more. And being able to do that's key to great storytelling, as well as some of the other pieces. And then, of course, audience. So I think that no matter if you're in sales, if you're an executive trying to grow your personal brand, you know, if you're in recruiting, if you're a nonprofit trying to solicit donations, depending on the audience that you're speaking to ultimately determines how you tell those stories to each one, even if the stories may be the same. So I think we had a couple people that wanted questions, and I'm gonna come down here actually. Sorry, camera guy. All right, let's see, who had a question over here? Is this check? Oh, well now you need it. Or who had a question over here? All right, who has a question right here? I'm gonna come back.
Hi, I'm Sadie Howell. I'm with Envision Greater Fond du Lac. So we are a combined Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Corporation. My question is, and it might also apply to the plexuses of the world, how do you tell your story without taking credit for other people's stories? So if we're helping a company start or expand and we need to tell our members and our investors why we matter, but we don't want to take the credit like you do for starting your own company?
That's an excellent question. The truth of the matter is take credit, okay? And I'm gonna tell you why. We had a customer, he bought our product. He was a small social media influencer, you know, a couple thousand followers. We're not talking anybody big. And my marketing director comes to me, he's like, you gotta see this kid. He's selling a ton of flip sticks. You gotta see this kid. He spoke American Sign Language. And you know, most of our people buying our product, they just, you know, are making TikToks, you know, nothing of meaning really. But he was using it because when he wanted to sign, he wanted to have all of his emotion there. So he would get on FaceTime, he would sign, but he needed both hands. So he would get the flip stick and he would take it, he would stick it to the wall, and then he would be able to sign with both hands and get all his emotion. So he's telling his followers, who also speak American Sign Language, hey, you can get this product, you can FaceTime, you can use it, you're gonna love it. And he's just selling flip sticks left and right through our influencer program. We walk into a meeting with Target, and I share that story with her. I'm like, hey, here's this 17-year-old kid, here's how he uses our product. She says to me, that's the exact type of customer we want in Target. So when you share the story of the people that you help and you incorporate it into your own, all of a sudden, whether it's a partner or it's a potential larger customer that you can work with, they're gonna work with you because of the story of your customers and of your stakeholders. So I think it's vitally important that we tell those stories, and we don't own it. We just made one small product. He did everything else, but it was still important for us to share that story in order for us to grow, or for him to grow, and ultimately for our customers to be satisfied with what we brought to the table. So I think you absolutely share those stories, and I wouldn't consider it taking credit for it. Great question. All right, what else we got? I know we got some questions in here. Yeah, I'll come to you.
Where are you from? We were just curious. We were looking to see kind of a little bit more of your background.
Yeah, so I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. Got anybody from St. Louis, Missouri? Ever been to St. Louis, Missouri? He said kinda, sorta. That's not a good sign. That's not a, you said you are? 8 years. Too long. No, I'm just kidding. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and you know, it's funny, when I left, went to school, had to come back because I lost my scholarship. It's kind of this devastating time for me. And I was able to finally build it back up. And when I started my business, and I'm sure some people in here will resonate with this, when I started my business, I felt like, man, no one in this town is helping me do what it is that I'm trying to do. No one wants to support me. They won't put me into their shops. No one wants to invest any money into me. And I think that I fell into this mindset of being at home where it's like, hey, I need to leave in order to be successful. Has anybody ever felt like I need to leave the town that I'm in, my hometown, in order to be successful? A lot of people, right? And what I found is that in any mid-market that you're in, if you're not in a New York or LA, a big international city, the story is actually the same. A lot of our homegrown talent, and I was one of them, felt like, hey, I have to leave in order to be successful for people to take me seriously. And, I'm so glad that I didn't leave my hometown, because even though I traveled around, I got a lot of opportunities, from getting on Shark Tank, and all that stuff came from traveling out. When we were getting ready to actually air, we didn't close our deal with our sharks. When you watch the episode, you'll see I closed the deal. We decided not to go through with it. Can't talk about it, lots of contracts. But when we were getting ready to go on the episode, I didn't have any inventory, had no warehouse, I had nothing, okay? And I had recently won a grant from an economic development corporation, $50,000. I wasn't supposed to get any of that money until 6 months ahead, and it was only gonna be 10 grand, and then the rest was gonna be over the course of a year. And I called them, I said, hey, I'm gonna be on Shark Tank. I need like 30K so I can get a warehouse, so I can buy inventory, everything. And when I tell you they moved mountains, they had $30,000 in my bank account within 24 hours. And if it wasn't for that Shark Tank episode, we had no product, we had no warehouse. The whole opportunity would have been dead before it ever got started. And it was one of those things where I realized, man, the people in my own town, they supported me so much. We raised our money, like they helped us raise money. All the different, when you watch the episodes, you'll see that I did business with a shark, but all of the different deals that we got, all the major retailers, they all came local people. Oh, I know so-and-so, they sell in the Target. I know so-and-so, they do this on QVC. I know so-and-so, he's at Amazon. And it was just all of our hometown folks helping us out. I know that didn't necessarily answer your question, but I just wanted to say that because to me, it's like, man, wherever you're from, the people there want to support you. You just got to get out and find them. All right, what else? What else we got here? Yeah.
How do you help people, we're Wisconsin, so we don't like to brag, to better tell our story? So the mindset piece of not feeling that we're too humble to tell the story so that more people know about the opportunities here.
So I think that's also an excellent question. I think a lot of us, we get taught as kids, like, don't brag, it's good to be humble. But here's how I look at it. If you're changing the world, you have a product or service that could change someone's life, and they never find out about it, whose fault is that? It's yours. You could have something that could literally change someone's life, and if they never find out about it, it did no good to anyone. And so when we go out and tell a story about a product that we make or a service that we offer, all of a sudden we give that opportunity to our customer, to our stakeholders, to potential employees. We get the opportunity to change their lives. And I think, to me, it's an obligation. And so I look at whatever I do as it's my obligation to share this information with the world. To me, it's like, growing up, my grandfather, he was a minister from the South. And he's ministered for 40 years. And it would be like if someone was Christian and they're like, I don't want to brag, so I'm not going to tell anybody about Christ, Jesus, none of it. Let me just keep it to myself. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, right? Not to share that. Or if you're a brilliant, financier like Ray Dalio, and you've helped countries make trillions of dollars, and you said, you know what? I don't want to brag. I'm not going to tell anyone how to manage their money. Like, they don't need that. Countries bringing China out of communism into capitalism? No, I'm not going to do that. We wouldn't think of it that way. So, yeah, I don't think of it as bragging. I think that's important for all of us to realize, like, we have something of value for people. It's not selling them something. We have something that's actually going to make a difference. And so we are obligated to put that difference out into the world? Great question. Cool, what else we got? Okay, she said she's got a question now, guys. She got it.
I just wasn't ready so soon. I'm Christine from Plexus, and I think my question is going to be rooted more from the corporate side, which I think many of my peers and colleagues here could relate to. We often try to tell stories around the functional things, the capabilities we have. We want to tell everyone everything, as you said a few moments ago. But as I engage with you, there's an energy, there's an emotional connection, which I think overheroes even the product story that you're talking about here today. So talk us through, like, how do you balance and bring through more of that emotional connection and then let the rest of the story tell itself in different ways?
I love this because I think even when we're small, I don't know, just real quick, raise of hands. Who here has a business that's under $10 million a year, works at a business under $10 million a year? Raise your hand. Okay, and then put those hands. And who here works for a business over $10 million a year? Raise your hand. Okay, perfect. It's about 50-50. And what I found as a small business is I started saying everything is we and us. And big, because I thought big was better. People love big. Now, I worked for some big companies. I was a #1 sales rep, and I won but 2 Fortune 500 companies in the whole country. But it was before I started Flipstick. One was Verizon, and one was Sprint. And what I didn't realize then that I learned later on is people don't always like big. They like personal. They want to feel like you know me and my issue, my problem personally, and therefore I will do business with you. One company that's really good at that is Apple. Apple does not talk about the megapixels in the camera. They don't talk about the milliamps in the batteries. They don't talk about all the different types of technologies and patents and trademarks that they do. That's not what they talk about. What they tell you is the story of a grandmother who needs to meet with their brand new grandchild who just happened to move across the world with their daughter in Vietnam, and how do I connect with that person? And so when you watch an ad from Apple, it shows you, hey, this grandmother gets to see face-to-face her brand new grandchild on the other side of the world. And that's why you should buy our product. Not because of the facts and the features and the benefits. They give you a story that's relatable. One of the pieces that I have here and the principles is what I call the what if. And so for me, when I am, no matter what audience I'm speaking to, I'm always trying to create in their mind is what if that was me? If I can create that moment within a customer or a potential employee, if I can create that within their mind, even as a large organization, it will always land whatever it is I need to land. It's just to give you a quick example. When we were trying to hire like some of our first senior employees, you know, we're small, we don't have a big budget. It's like, how am I gonna convince these folks to come from real companies with real benefits to my tiny little organization? And the key was telling the story of, hey, here's who I am, here's how I got started, here's what it was like for me when I worked for a little company. When I worked at Square, they just had a couple hundred employees, grew to several thousand. And I told them what happened to me there and what benefit that gave to me and my family and my life, being at a small company and growing big. And by telling that story, they immediately say, man, I'm seeing this guy, he convinced Snoop Dogg, he's gotten on Shark Tank, and he did this at this other company, and then now he has this. Well, what if that was me? So that's how I did my recruiting to grow. When I was at a much larger organization and I was doing sales, all I did was share story after story of our customers. That's all I would ever focus on, because I want our future customers to feel like they look just like our current customers. When I was at Square, every coffee shop I talked to, I was like, listen, let me tell you a story. And I would just tell the story of our customers. It didn't matter about the technology. They didn't care about any of that. And it was the most advanced credit card processing technology in the world at the time. Doesn't matter. They wanted that what if moment to say, man, if my business can grow like this other person that helps business, where would I be? What would that look like for my family? What would that look like for my company? I think that makes ultimately the big difference. So yeah, thank you. Come over here. Beth.
Hi, Beth Hudak with House of Hope. A lot of your story is about failure, which I really love. How can we, as leaders in our organizations, encourage stories of failure that don't make people feel bad and also don't concern our investors?
Okay, so this is a great question. You know, I think that we live in a world today where it's very glossy, it's social media driven, it's all about wins after wins after wins. Let me tell you about our wins. And for me, wins aren't always realistic. We don't always learn from our wins. We learn from our failures. And I find that when people see that we learn and evolve, they buy into it. I wasn't 100% sure about this until I had my first employee lose me $100,000. And the way that happened was we had a shipping issue. It was post-COVID, but still where shipping was very expensive. We missed the deadline. We had to get it to a retailer. We had to spend $100,000 over what we had expected to spend. We made no money off of the shipment. And at first I was furious. You know, I'm like, what am I gonna tell our investors? It's gonna be horrible, it's gonna be terrible. But I gave that employee the room to make that mistake. And when he made that mistake, that operational mistake, he went after that, he felt like, I have to fix this. Over the next 2 months, he went and found us in China, the same company that does about 70% of the overseas delivery for eBay. Found that company, interviewed them, and got them to start warehousing our products, saved us about 60% on our shipping fees internationally. It's unbelievable, unprompted. Now, did I tell the investors that story when we had just lost the $100,000? No. Did I tell them the story after we saved the 60, 70%? Absolutely. I'm a big believer in curated stories. They need to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. If you tell a story in the middle, it doesn't always help people, just to be honest. So I think that sometimes if you reach failure, you have to get to the success, the meat and potatoes of the story at the end before it's actually going to be a benefit to you sharing. And who knows the story of Abraham Lincoln? What happened to Abraham Lincoln before he became president? Does anyone know that? Do you know that? You want to share it? Was he just... Yeah, so I didn't know this. You know, in my school, they said, Abraham Lincoln, greatest president, he just won. That was it. But that's not what happened. She just said he lost a lot of elections. Well, before that, he had a business in Springfield. He was co-founded it with his business partner. Business partner was a smart one, no offense. And when the business partner unexpectedly died, the business goes out of business. It's Abraham Lincoln, terrible businessman. So he says, man, company's out of business. Maybe I should run for election. And that's what he does. He runs for election. He gets into Congress. And then what happens when he gets into Congress? What happens the next year when he runs for re-election?
He served one term and then he left.
And then he loses. So then what does he do?
For senator.
He says, you know what? I may not have got re-elected for Congress. I'm going to run for senator. Now, that's crazy. But he wins. And then when he becomes senator, he says, man, you know what's better than senator? Speaker of the House. And what happens? He doesn't get it. And since he doesn't get Speaker of the House, he says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to run for president. Saves the entire union. And it wouldn't have happened if he hadn't failed and failed and failed again. This may not even be a country if that man hadn't failed all of those times. But if he just comes out and he says, vote for me, my business just went out of business, that may not have worked out for him. But in retrospect, that story then becomes the powerful unit. It's way more powerful than it was if he just won, you know, because it's real. And I think particularly for young people, I speak to a lot of, you know, younger generations, and I think we live in a time where we see success all the time, we don't we don't see the failure. And so when we fail, we think, what? That's not what was supposed to happen. That's unrealistic. When I'm in school, if I fail, it's all bad. There's nothing to learn. But in reality, everyone's failing. We just don't talk about it. So I think that every time I have a success, I always have to say what failure led me into the next success. I think it's critical, a critical component. Great question. Who's first?
Akeem, clearly you are on fire. You mentioned the spiritual side of all of this, so I was just going to know what ignites you.
Oh, Karen. Oh, I'm so glad you asked me that. To me, there's a huge spiritual component when it comes to success, business, entrepreneurship. Like, I'll tell you this is great. This is nuts. Okay, so, I mentioned earlier in the first talk about I was in this great mindset when I got this phone call from my uncle. And I mentioned a book. Does anyone remember the name of the book? The Alchemist. Raise your hand if you read The Alchemist. Who wants to share in 2 sentences what The Alchemist is about? No, you know what? No one ever wants to. No one ever wants to recap anything. So The Alchemist, for those uninitiated, is about a boy who goes on a journey to find his treasure. He has a dream about it. And early on in this journey, he learns about omens. We call them signs from the universe, signs from God that will guide him along his way. And when I read this, it just resonated with me. I'm like, man, I just quit my job, a really, really great job working for Square. I'm out here on my own. I was doing marketing. I wasn't loving it. And I'm like, man, there's just this opportunity that's out here. And if I just have my mind open to the opportunity, it'll come to me and I'll find it. And when I did that, I get this phone call. And I just was so relentless, and I'm never like that, but I was so relentless that, hey, this opportunity is the one for me, I have to take it. And I think that if I was not in that mindset, opportunity doesn't happen. It ends right there. Who's ever had like an idea and then like a few years later you saw it on TV? Or you saw it on the internet, you're like, oh, I thought of that. That would have been me, guaranteed. I'm a big believer that if you have an idea, a whole lot of other people are getting that same frequency you're getting at the same time. So if you don't act, someone else will. That's why when Uber comes out, Lyft comes out. They were both thinking about it. And I found out that all the great opportunities that I had, they were such a chance encounter of me just recognizing there was an opportunity that existed there. That summit that I told you about, Revolt Summit by AT&T, that's a music conference. I had no business going to a music conference, let alone paying $500 for a VIP ticket. No business doing that. I had no money, it was dwindling down, and I did it anyway because there was just a feeling. And I think that for me, I like to meditate. I told you my grandfather's a minister. I like to pray, and I like to really focus in on let me see the opportunity that exists, because if I can see the opportunity, I don't have to work so hard. And that happened to me again and again. I can't tell you the crazy stories of just paying attention. And it's all about how you feel in the moment. If you got anxiety and depression and you're worried about this, that, and the other, you'll miss it, and it'll be right in front of you. And I'll give you guys one other story where that happened. I'm coming to you. When early on, we had no budget, and we need to advertise. We had a Kickstarter campaign. And I reached out to this family called the Onyx family, and all their kids were on YouTube. And they're all young, like all under 12. And they have millions and millions of followers. I'm like, man, if they'll just make a video about Flipstick, it may go viral right away. And so I finally get a hold of them, and their agent, when I looked him up, he was also the agent, no lie, of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And I immediately realized they're going to be very expensive. He sends me a quote. He's like, we'd love to do this. $70,000 for a YouTube video. $70,000. I'd never even heard of these kids, okay? And my mom was trying to convince me at the time to go. I was just starting the business. We hadn't even launched our Kickstarter. Realize this. My mom was trying to convince me to go see my uncle for Easter, the same uncle who I got that phone call from that works at NASA. I'm like, I can't go. I'm working on this new project. I can't tell you about it. I got to work on this. And she's like, oh, just come down for Easter. So I'm looking at the emails from them, and my email program tells me, like the location where my email was open. And to back up a little bit, over the last few days, I kept getting all these signs. I was watching TV, and someone was like, oh yeah, we have a grandma, she just won the contest out of Huntsville. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And then I was watching a movie, and in the movie, it was a movie about space, and the space shuttle was falling apart, and they're like, Earth to Huntsville, Earth to Huntsville. That never happens. It's always, Houston, we have a problem. I'm like, what's this, janky movie talking about Earth to Huntsville? What's happening here? And then as I look at this email, the email was open in Huntsville. So I send an email back, and I'm like, hey, I'm coming to Huntsville for Easter. The agent doesn't respond. The dad responds. He's like, I'd love to meet you. Let's meet at Starbucks. Turns out, Dad's a former minister. We meet at Starbucks, and he says, you know what? I'm gonna make my kids do the video for you for free. A $70,000 sponsorship, free. If I hadn't gone to Huntsville, never would have happened. So I'm a big believer, like, your mental state will determine the outcomes. That video, if you look that video up, it has like 3 million views. And that was the very first video anyone ever made about Flipstick. So all about your mindset.
I love your mindset. And one of the things I wanted to ask about is the story you tell yourself and the story you tell to other people before it actually happens. Because so many times it's the vision is yours, and now it's your responsibility to make that happen. And many times people are afraid to tell what's on their heart, to tell where they're going, because they feel like they haven't been there yet. But I've heard about people talking it until it's reality, so go ahead and help me with that.
Brian, speaking my language now. You don't let me take you to church, Brian, now. Hold on. So, I'm a big believer in speaking things into existence. I've always done that since I started this business, and let me tell you, it doesn't matter what your religion is, it absolutely works. You will be matched up with the opportunity that you seek every single time. And so I was talking to my grandfather, very wise man, he's 96 now, and I told him I read The Alchemist, and he's like, grandson, if you had read the Bible, it was already in there. I said, well, The Alchemist was more entertaining, Grandpa, so I learned it from The Alchemist, okay? And he tells me, he's like, there's another book you need to read, and it's called Think and Grow Rich. Raise your hand if you read Think and Grow Rich. Oh, we just have a couple. And the reason you haven't read it is because it's 100 years old. I'm like, Grandfather, I'm not reading a book from 100 years ago about business. Like, come on now. But when I read The Alchemist, it was good, but it's, it's fiction, so it's kind of woo-woo type of stuff. And I wasn't feeling good. We had applied to Shark Tank, didn't work. I was kind of down a little bit. And so I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to give this Think and Grow Rich book a try. And the author of Think and Grow Rich, what he did 100 years ago was he went and interviewed titans of industry. And he tried to figure out, how did you do this? And we're talking like household names, Henry Ford, we're talking Morgan Stanley we're talking all of the titans, U.S. Steel, all these guys. He interviewed them and said, how did you do it? And they're like, man, I just thought about it. I said I could do it. And then things started to come together and the opportunities came together where it allowed me to do it. And as I read this book, I'm like, Henry Ford? I'm like, if he had nothing, knew nobody, no education, nothing, builds one of the most iconic American businesses in the history of the world, and all he started with was a vision that, I just think it can work. That's it. I was like, man, I can do this too. I can do it too. As I was trying to create the Flipstick originally, I didn't know any manufacturers. I didn't know anything about manufacturing, making something. I don't know about patents, none of those things. But I believed that, hey, I can make this happen. I had this phone call, and I had this vision, and I had this idea for this product, and I can just make it happen. And I thought back on a story I had heard about the founder of GoPro. Who knows the story of the founder of GoPro? Nobody. Who knows what a GoPro is? There we go. So the founder of GoPro, not an engineer, not a photographer, a videographer, no tech, nothing. He's a surfer. And he's not a good surfer. He was troubled because he had traveled around the world, lost a whole bunch of surfing competitions, and he had no footage except from the beach, which was miles away from where he was surfing. And so he thought to himself, man, it would be really great if I could record myself while I was surfing and not destroy the camera. And this is, it's a while back. There's no iPhones and none of that stuff to record. Waterproof iPhones, although they're still not waterproof if you ask some people. And he literally goes to Best Buy, buys a little Sony cam, goes to the acrylic store, gets some acrylic, duct tapes it, puts it in a package, FedExes off to China and says, hey, can you make this, but make it waterproof? $3 billion company. And I said, if he could do that, I can do that. And that's exactly what I did. I made my little prototype out of paper and double-sided tape. I recorded it, didn't even FedEx it because I'm lazy. And I sent it to factories in China, and that's how we found our first factory and made the first version of our product. So I think that if you believe that you can make it happen and you believe in yourself and you follow your vision, man, the sky's the limit. You can make it happen. And that's my time, guys. I got to run. But it was great meeting everybody. And feel free, I'll be here at the network reception, so ask me any other questions you got. Thanks.